Welcome to episode 722 of Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido. I'm here with Jen, the Arcane Observer, tonight, and we are talking more about alien abductions, the whole phenomenon itself. And it's a little bit darker of a subject than usual, so for anyone who wants to avoid that, I totally understand, and you can skip to the next episode. But for now, Jen, welcome back to the show.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm okay. I know you had we kind of had to end quickly last time, so I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention before we move on to this article I found, or go right ahead with whatever you have.
Yeah, I don't think of it as being. I mean, I know it could come across as being a dark topic, but honestly, it's not much different than when you're just trying to find something out, figure something out, and without shying away from anything, or But it's interesting how it kind of brings up those feelings, like it's something you want to shy away from a little bit because of the nature of it. There's something about that in the alien abduction, the abduction experience, it's not always negative. I mean, some people have positive experiences, but when talking about it, it's something so. A lot of times, it's off-putting, and it evokes, pardon me, a feeling of something so strange. That it does. I think it can take on a feeling like it was something to avoid, not want to happen again. But it should be said that I guess there are other people who want it to happen again, but they relate it to something different. So, like people who talk about having a spiritual experience, or they talk about having encountered some type of benevolent, and they have a benevolent experience. They don't always call it an alien abduction experience. It's a different sort of thing. So there's something about the nature of that, I think, that's really strange. Some people, when they are having these experiences, it has, there's a funny thing about the differentiation between having an alien abduction experience and why they classify it as such. And when others would say, I don't know, I was having this very pleasant experience. But and they can be just as profound, but it's ironic, the way that is placed in the mind. And actually that goes across the entire paranormal spectrum of, the interpretation of the experience. And then too, that classifying, it could be the same. When you encounter a nice person and you have a good experience, you say, I encountered a human being. But when you hear about encounters with human beings where it was a horrific experience, as is very common, as the good experiences, we don't differentiate that it was a human being that did it, or that we had the experience with. But when it comes to aliens, people are very quick to say, oh, that was not an alien abduction, or that was something different. Although it could have been very well the same exact culprit of a positive experience or a negative experience. But we don't, because it's such unfamiliar territory, and there's the shying away. It's the same thing in the human psyche when we talk about experiences with people, that when we see human beings doing terrible things, we want to get away from it. But when we hear about people doing good things, we want to draw closer to it. And so when we're thinking about alien abduction, it's much like that to me, that it could be the same entities, or same type of class of entity, doing different things, having a type of individuality about the nature of the species. I mean, it's a little different, though, because it gives it a lot of intelligence. It's not like saying, if you encounter, for example, a virus, the encounter is always bad. So it's not quite like that. Or if there's a masking of it in some way, there's that possibility. But if you understand the nature of something, kind of like when you encounter certain types of animals or fish or insects or anything like that, there's a way of understanding the nature of it, and therefore you get a different experience of it if you understand the nature of it. But it's almost like we're dealing with something like people. Like sometimes they are very helpful and they have this good advice and they have a good guidance. And sometimes it's almost like it's malevolent or the motive is unclear with alien abduction.
Yeah, just thinking about people, when we encounter people that are doing terrible things, we call them different things like monsters, and I mean I've even heard people call some famous figures in history, almost like call them like demons or like devils. I mean that's again going back to what I mentioned in the last episode, and I think this is really more of what I wanted to talk about too, not just the cases that almost everyone knows about these days. If you've looked into anything anomalous or reportedly anomalous, whether it's the Betty and Barney Hill case or the Travis Walton case, I mean, these are names that a lot of people know, even if they don't look into all these topics. But yeah, I think again, this words and describing things can be difficult. And yeah, I've heard of I think we've all just about now listened to a lot of shows and watched a lot of shows about people's experiences, and they do say that they have. In some cases, they even say, "I had this encounter with aliens or other beings, and this part of it was a good experience, and then there was this other part that was bad, that was not fun, that was negative." So you can have conflicting feelings about these same figures, which, if you think about it, that can be said for people as well. Um, so yeah, that's one aspect of it. Also, the other thing too is I can't rule out some kind of contact with a some kind of a spiritual force, or even an alien, but maybe just one individual alien, just some other force or entity that was able to put images in my mind somehow through telepathy or whatever, and then also somehow provide let's say physical pressure or physical sensations, that was able to make me have these sensations of laying on a flat surface, feeling that again, that needle touch my eye, and it just touched it. That's the thing. I mean, that was terrifying enough, but it's not like it. I mean, I woke up and I was uninjured as far as I could tell. So there was no obvious physical signs of what happened. I just had those physical sensations. So that's I think this is a good thing to talk about, is that we really have no idea what is going on in a lot of these experiences. I think the best we can do is describe them as well as we can, and in some cases say, well, it seemed like I've been saying all night, this seemed like an alien abduction experience, but I don't know for sure.
The not being able to move part is really interesting. Like in a lot of dream states, there's that sort of scenario going on where a person feels like they're moving through. They want to move faster, but they can't. But then you apply that to a scenario where it's like a, in quote, lucid dream, which is supposed to just be, in our minds, a state of a rare dream state. But in that state of lucid dreaming, the power of it is so strong because it's something, it feels real beyond it just a dream. The whole sensation of it is different. But the fact that it seems like it's coming from something else that's preventing you from moving, and then coming out of that state. That's why I think that a lot of times, or why I've begun to think in probably the last, I'd say like 7 years or so, that it was happening, and the abduction experience was happening. Because I've had experiences too about it, for sometime in the future or whatever, but where it did appear to be happening in not necessarily a body, like it wasn't in the body necessarily, but it was. So it was as if some aspect of the body was having the experience, and it was beyond just a dream state where you have a really
Right.
strong differentiation between the two. It was as if it was happening, truly happening. And the waking up was almost like a coming out of when you're under anesthesia or something like that, where it's almost like that. So the possibility of the alien abduction experience happening without a person actually leaving where they are still leaving or going somewhere else, because and then the control over the individual, as if you're out of your element and you're somewhere else where something else has some type of control over it, is odd. But I've had an experience too with out of body where I felt like I did have a great deal of control over what was happening, and even would forget that I had a body to go back to. Almost, I was,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
But with alien abduction, it's something else removing you to somewhere else, or something, or it seems that way, or they are where you are at. But anyway, the encounter with these entities, and then trying to figure out what they are, you know.
Right. And I was just thinking just now too, something I don't know if I never thought about before, but the whole phenomenon of sleep paralysis. I wonder
Yeah.
if there was some element of that in there. Is that why I couldn't move?
Well,
But then
I,
it's hard
I've
to
talked.
know because
Yeah.
it's I've heard that that can be a natural state, which I can understand. But I've also heard that other beings can cause that as well.
Yeah, I may have a limited view because I mean I have experienced sleep paralysis, and I had had that problem. Not but what was weird about it was that it was conditional almost, like it would go on for it would happen at certain times and then not happen at and I haven't had it happen in a long time. But it was almost like there was something to. So I'm relating a lot of these experiences to, I think, what you could classify as being sleep paralysis, where I would literally wake up and see these entities while I was awake. I was completely awake. It felt like to me. And
Right.
so I think that's the way that I'm interpreting a lot of this, is from that. And I've been told, and I want to tell you, that it's sleep paralysis of some kind. But for me, it was much different than that. It's hard to convince me that it was sleep
Right.
paralysis. I try
Yeah.
to convince myself that it was sleep paralysis.
Yeah. No, I wish I could write off whatever it was that happened, and just
Me too.
put it all behind me and just not think about it much. But and the other problem with writing it off is I've heard of accounts where people have said that they've had needles aimed at their eyes too, and or they've come out of experiences and they had basically um, pink eye for a while after the experience. Even when they're not asleep, when they have encounters with UFOs or aliens, again, whatever those are, they have reports of that happening when they're awake. Anyway, so this idea of some kind of energy being affecting the eyes, whether it's intentional or not, and that's why I don't really know for sure. When I'm describing this experience that I've had, I'm not saying directly 100% for sure that whoever or whatever caused it, whoever or whatever was moving around me, that they were responsible for what happened with my eyes after. I don't know that for sure. But I also don't know that they weren't responsible. I just don't know. I can't say anything for sure about any of that except for, again, what I've sort of outlined in that last episode here.
But it seemed related. I mean, they were focusing on the way that you were seeing. It's as if like I mean, you think about this. If one of the senses is taken away, there's some validation I've heard about that. And it's not just there will be a sort of compensation of the other senses. The other senses will heighten up, and I think that with the first sense that most people have is their ability to see. Again, that's what they think, and that's how they interpret the world, is what they see. But if you take that away, their interpretation of the world will be entirely different, or how they will perceive events may have a different impact of how they explain them. So it's really interesting to kind of switch off one sense, or to at least quiet one sense so that another one is enhanced. So, like, for example, if you were to cover your eyes and plug your ears, another sense is enhanced. Or maybe even the internal world is enhanced, and the individual would have a stronger impact from seeing the world that way, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had that with my hearing. My sense of hearing has always been very good. I think partially from just having the lack of vision, but also practice as well. But yeah, and I've had, because I've done many different. I've been on a few other podcasts over the years talking about my experiences, and there have been a couple of people that have asked if I think that I have a heightened sort of spiritual sense as compensation for having low vision, and I don't know. It's possible. I think. Just looking at the chat here, Matt Sowell says maybe they were trying to fix your eyes, basically, and it was a botched surgery, which is possible. I don't know. And that's the thing. That's why it's again. That's all I keep saying a lot is I don't know, because I think it's important to do that, because I think anyone that says they have all the answers, yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Well, no, there can't be answers. It's just a lot of questions. And then you rule out what doesn't make sense.
Right.
That's how I think about it. A lot of times it's just using your own decent common human sense. It can only make sense to a human the way that they're thinking. And so, like, if they were trying to fix it, it's like, well, I don't know. It
Yeah.
does, the fact that it would enhance other things, or that you were already on a path to a heightened sense in other ways, there could be some type of interaction on that level, and why that might be useful to them is interesting, or why they'd want to intervene at all when they don't intervene on other things. So it's almost as if, like, or maybe they do, but the fact that you would have a different experience of your existence due to that, if that is somehow something useful to them in some way, maybe they want to, I don't know, are they vicariously, what is the relationship between us and these entities that we think are behind abduction experience, and trying to get down to which creatures kind of fit the bill throughout history of possibly being behind the curtain of this sort of experience, mystical or otherwise. Who are they, and what are they doing it for?
Right. I wonder if we should maybe keep on talking about this. We still have like 6 minutes left, 5 minutes left, but I wonder if we should maybe keep on talking about this next weekend too. Look into more of the historical, I don't know, reports of all this, and not just modern, but like before that, throughout history and throughout literature. That could be, I think that could be something good to look into. But yeah, because I mean, like I said, a lot of people know about the names I mentioned already. This article here, I mentioned also, uh, is all about this whole experience, but I think it is from a more it covers these things in a more traditional sense, but than what we've been talking about. But this article here, I will share it in the episode description. It's from All That's Interesting, and the title is "The Most Convincing Alien Abduction Stories in Modern History," or Modern Abduction History. Let me see here. No, modern history. Sorry. And but then again, that's saying modern. So I'm sure there's probably, I mean, biblical. There's probably other ancient texts, um, accounts of people vanishing mysteriously and then reappearing and making saying things that happened to them that don't make sense to anyone else. So I think we can probably do that next week as well. But yeah, it's I think it's a big topic, and especially when you do look at it from more than just the usual traditional nuts and bolts UFO kind of craft idea. Not that I ever discount any idea as far as that goes, but I think there's, like everything else that we ever discuss on the show, there's so much more to it than that.
Yes, it's like when you really examine and exhaust a topic to the point where you are actually done with it. And then it's almost at that point that once you relax from that, like then you can see what may actually be going on with it, or you come to some kind of clarity about it. But it takes a while. You have to go down every single mind avenue that your mind can think of, and then with another individual or multiple individuals, at least a few, like getting the context, usually coming through articles and things like that, and past stories and folklore and things like that. But when talking with, to each other, for example, it does kind of help to sort of, could it have been this? Why would it be that? Sort of working through it until you find a place where you're like, oh, I'm done with this. I feel satisfied that I've said everything I think about it. And then there comes a point where you think something else about it you hadn't thought of before. And it goes like that with a lot of things. When you're really trying to make it out and see what it is, trying to find what it could be, you have to go through so many different layers of what it might be before you actually find what it is. And I think, at least for what with satisfaction, to where I can reduce it to nothing else. But it might be this. But there are no clear answers. There never are. Where something doesn't definitively tell you what it is. And when it comes to the nature of like an entity, it's like trying to pick apart another human being. So when you talk about it entirely, is it humanity? Is it human? Is it something different than human? And how would you know the difference? Because, the way that humans interpret things. I think that's by design. But I've always thought about things like, like the intelligences of, anyway, it's a huge topic. It really is, because it really is.
Yeah, and I think we could even look into, and we haven't done this yet. I think we need to talk about the whole fae or fairy aspect of everything too, because there's a connection there as well, and that's
Yes.
definitely something we'll have to maybe that we'll do that next time. But yeah, we are just about out of time. So Jen, thank you as always for being with me on these shows, and I look forward to talking to you next time.
Thank you. I had a good time. Thank you, Jane.
No problem, and always glad to have you here. And yeah, so I think we'll continue this conversation about sort of the abduction experience next time, and work in some folklore regarding what I just mentioned there, because I've heard there's connections with that as well. And I'm looking at my clock here. I think it's like a minute slow, so I'm gonna have to fix that later. Anyway, thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.